Hello and welcome to the Romance Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail Z Martin, and tonight we are talking about K-drama romance, those Korean dramas that we just can't walk away from. But before we get started, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Alethea.
Hi, I'm Alethea Kontis, and I'm a little verklempt, so I'm going to get myself a Kopiko. Third. No, not really, but I've gotten all my friends across the Eastern Seaboard falling in love with this stuff. This candy is fantastic, by the way. I bought it as a joke. Anyway, I am a New York Times bestselling author, a storm chaser, and K-drama, K-pop fan now for the past few years.
Okay. And Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison Temple. I do not have Kopiko, but I just bought a Hyundai and it is parked in my driveway. So this evening's panel is sponsored by Hyundai. I write queer romance and fantasy. And I have also been a K-drama, K-pop devotee since 2022.
And I'm Gail Z Martin and Morgan Brice. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. Honestly, my adult kids got me into K-dramas, and I am now utterly besotted and hooked. And yeah, they're really addictive. So I'm really looking forward to talking about this. Speaking of which, how did you discover Korean dramas? Alethea?
I was at my best friend Casey's house. Casey and I have been best friends since we were 11, and we met at a YMCA lock-in in the movie room. We're the only two people in the movie room watching Poltergeist 2. And we just have the same taste in everything. So when she said, "Do you want to try a K-drama?" I mean, my instinct was no, but it's Casey. Of course she's going to recommend the most amazing thing to me. So I said yes. And we proceeded to watch Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. And that was it. I mean, I was gone. We started watching Crash Landing on You after that, but yeah. But before I left Casey's house that fall, because I go up north usually every fall and come back, and I stop in Charlotte on the way back, my editor at NPR died. And it really, pulmonary embolism just gone. She was my age or younger. It was completely out of the blue. It was my favorite job. She was one of my favorite people. I talked to her almost every day, and I just didn't know how to handle it. And when I got back home, K-dramas became my therapy. And I fell into that. And we can also talk about K-dramas as therapy later on. But yeah, it's for about a year and a half, my depression was expressed in nonstop K-dramas.
Okay. Allison.
Yeah, K-dramas is therapy. Let's go. So I was writing, it was the summer of July 2022. I was writing a novella that would eventually become Destination Bedding. And it was two childhood friends who are both bridesmaids in a wedding, a destination wedding. And I'm in my 40s, like all of my friends, we all got married 10, 15 plus years ago. So I hadn't been to a wedding in a while. So I started watching wedding rom-coms on Netflix just to sort of remind myself of like all of the quirky things that could happen at a wedding. And I watched a bunch of them, but I was like, in my mind, if you're thinking about like late 90s, early 2000s rom-coms, like the wedding rom-com is My Best Friend's Wedding.
My Best Friend's Wedding, absolutely.
Absolutely, with Julia Roberts. So I looked for it on the various streaming services, and I searched My Best Friend's Wedding on Netflix, and it came up, and the little poster was of a Chinese woman. And I was like, that's not Julia Roberts. But I read the little synopsis, and I was like, that sounds familiar. And it turned out that it was, in fact, a Chinese remake of My Best Friend's Wedding. So it was exactly the same plot. It was set in Paris. And I sort of watched it in the background while I was working on this book. And what I didn't know is that when you say yes on Netflix to an Asian movie show, whatever, something in the algorithm like switches. And then the next time you log in, it's like, did you like that? Would you like to see every show and movie Asia has released on our platform in the last 5 years? And I was like, well, I mean, that seemed cute. What else is there? So I put on, not knowing anything, I put on Crash Landing on You, which I think should be everyone's gateway drug in K-drama, honestly. And it was like the next thing I knew, it 2 days later, I had watched, and it's a long one. Like the episodes are long. There's a lot of episodes, and 2 days later, I'm like staying up till 1 and 2 in the morning trying to finish this, but I'm also trying to write this novella, and like, yeah, and that was sort of the beginning of the
Were
end. It was
Bingen
just,
married by then? Because they got married right around that time too.
yeah, I think they were. Yeah, so it
we
was
watched
like
it before they got married. So when they got married, I was like,
I saw him this year.
oh,
The
oh, at the
premiere
Toronto
for,
Film Festival.
yeah. So the premiere
We saw
for Harbin
Don't
was
too.
at TIFF, and so I saw both of them, and yeah, Hyunbin. I remember watching that. I remember watching Crash Landing on You, and I literally like took a picture of my TV and sent it to a friend, and I was like, "This is the most beautiful human being in the world." Like,
Yes.
I've never seen this, and so I
When
saw
he's
him in
playing
person this
piano
fall.
on the dock on the lake in Switzerland, surrounded by the mountains, like just
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so that was my origin story, and then it was like I just started mainlining. I watched Goblin. I watched, like, I tend to sort of follow actors from one show to the next, and then follow the next actor to the next show. So like it just, yeah. And now it's been, I guess, 2.5 years. I'm currently like, as soon as we wrap this up, I'm gonna go back downstairs and keep watching When the Phone Rings, because it's just getting to like
I have
no clue.
I was waiting on that one to finish. That
Yeah,
one
me too.
That one in Squid Game, I haven't.
Yes. Yeah. No, I haven't started the new Squid Game yet. But yeah, but When the Phone Rings, I have never watched a K-drama before where I have no clue. Like 6 episodes in, there's only 12 episodes. I have no clue where this is going. So
Nice.
yeah, so that, Gail, is my K-drama origin story.
I blame my daughter. Our kids are adults, and our middle daughter said, "You really need to watch this." And what she got us turned on to was It's Okay Not to Be Okay.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh Jung-se, his lead role in the
Yes.
film just made him one of my favorite characters ever.
Yes.
Ever.
And it's interesting because while I love reading certain types of romance, I like watching certain types of romance, but there are other types of romance I'm just not that into. And so I wasn't sure whether I'd like this. And it was exactly the kind of romance I love. And the characters were deep. I couldn't figure out, I didn't see straight through to the end from the very first episode, which I like twists and turns. The plot was well done. And let's be honest, the people were very pretty.
And she's a writer, and she's such a
She's a writer.
Yeah. And the
We
people
know
are
these
just
people.
very pretty, easy on the eye. And this was during pandemic. So what else did we have to do except click next? And
Yes.
so we started, watching through pandemic with a lot of the things that now are sort of like classics. Because we watched Strong Girl Bong Soon and Crash Landing on You and What's Wrong with Secretary Kim.
Oh yeah.
And we actually came late to Hometown Cha Cha Cha. We just finished that not too long ago. So yeah, it's like, where have you been all my life? And we'll be talking about paranormal K-dramas in another panel, but that was also like, oh yes, tell me more. So that was pretty cool. So how do you deal with a series of shows where you have to read subtitles? These are not usually dubbed. That was new to my experience. So how does that affect the viewing, and how did you get used to that? Alethea?
I majored in chemistry when I was in college, but my boyfriend was a film major, so I ended up actually taking quite a few film classes and watching a ridiculous amount of foreign films in other languages. Plus, my dad, when I was growing up, worked at an international company. So we constantly had people in and out of our house speaking languages from all around the planet. So I knew Spanish and French. I had no clue about Korean, but I started to pick it up really fast. I mean, I was mainlining, night and day. I could do a K-drama in 2 days because I was, depressed and just never left the couch. So I started picking it up really quick, and I could tell that what they were saying in Netflix, their subtitlers must have some sort of different guidelines to use. So when I found out about Viki, I started watching everything on Viki because those subtitlers do a lot more cultural notes. They do
Mhm.
a lot more literary, like if it's an idiom that Americans might not be familiar with, they will explain it. So I stopped watching Netflix until I knew more Korean. But yeah, I know quite a bit of Korean now and have gone back to Netflix because I can get the jokes without having to read the subtitles. But I still can't quite, I don't know enough to just completely, tune it out and listen. I have to pay attention. And in that way, it becomes a meditation because so many people now, Netflix will even hire writers and buy shows to put on their platform that are literally so people can just listen to them in the background. They're
Mhm.
background watching mid-list kind of shows. And with a K-drama, you have to focus.
Mhm.
And so it becomes that meditation where everything else in the world kind of goes away because it's you and these people and these characters and these words, and you have to pay attention. And in a way, I think that's actually quite helpful.
Okay. Allison.
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if Alethea and I share a brain, because so I was a biology major, but my
Right.
parents are French Canadian, so we watched some French programming growing up, so I read a lot of subtitles there. And my dad was the film geek in our house. So yeah, so I mean, light viewing at our house was The Seven Samurai or The Seventh Seal.
Oh, yeah.
I learned all about the pros and cons of white versus yellow subtitling by the time I was finished high school. So tackling something like a K-drama with subtitles wasn't a big deal, but it does definitely, particularly in the early days, like it was all I could do. Like there was no, now I can sort of get one going and like play the stupid game on my iPad. As long as there isn't, it's not a game with like a time limit. As long as I'm just coloring something, I can sort of look up and down. I know enough Korean now, 2.5 years later, that like heavy plot details, I have to actually read the subtitles. But like the basic, like I'm hungry, you cook this really well, like the basic, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the day-to-day conversation. Um, I understand pretty well. So yeah, so I don't have to read it as closely. I did discover the same thing about the Netflix subtitles. Like they're meant for ease of reading, not
Mm,
necessarily cultural clarity.
that's a good
So
way to.
I also, yeah, stuck with Viki um early on because they did have those little footnotes being like, this is a joke because this word and this word sound similar. Um Whereas Netflix, either I'm thinking they probably just changed the joke because it's not like I'm reading stuff on Netflix going, why is he referring to pudding? They're looking for a body.
In
Um,
Extraordinary Attorney Woo, where she does the rhyming thing and they
yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
change the words at the
Yes,
bottom to rhyme, I was like,
yes,
that's fascinating, but also
yeah,
I need to know what all that is in actual words. Yeah.
yeah. So I also figured that out early on. Yeah, and now I watch them interchangeably, and I'll watch them on Prime and Disney, and I'm waiting for all of the episodes of The Tale of Lady Oak to come out so that I can sign up for the free trial on Cocoa for 14 days, so I don't have to pay for the app because we don't need more apps.
Right.
Yeah, but certainly, yeah. So the subtitles were not a huge deal, but did require a lot of attention at first to make sure that I was understanding. Is he asking where the train station is, or is he saying that like I've been alive for 900 years and you're the only one who can see me?
That's important.
It
Mhm.
is.
Um, I'm kind of in the middle. I picked up on certain words, but I think it's a big thing for me to have to pay attention to the subtitles because I am the queen of tuning out and having something on in the background.
Mhm.
And so having it require my attention to know what's going on gets me to relax and quit multitasking and put down the other thing and actually watch the friggin' show.
Yeah.
And that's tough for me. I twitch because I'm so used to doing more than one thing at a time. But I figure it's good for me because it's making me watch one thing and focus my attention and not be scattered across 3 different projects. Um, and now sometimes depending on the show, they do kind of go off on little tangents where you can check your phone for a little bit and they'll still be tangenting, and then you can come back and when they start talking about important things. But I actually find that to be a feature, not a bug, because I have to pay attention to it. Now, South Korea has a very different culture. How do you adjust to romance South Korean style? Alethea?
I loved it because I grew up in the melting pot, the literal melting pot that we were all supposed to grow up as in America. I was born in Vermont and we moved to South Carolina when I was 6. But we lived in an apartment complex right outside of Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina. So our neighbors were Venezuelan and a Korean. My mother learned how to make kimchi, and I don't actually remember the first time I ate kimchi, but you remember the first time your apartment smells like kimchi. Weeks. We made friends with a Taiwanese couple who had kids the same age as me and my sister. So we celebrate New Year's and Lunar New Year every year, and have Chinese food. Like, so my family is just the melting pot. When I walked around the neighborhood the other day, because my parents live down the street, like my big fat Greek wedding. I'm half Greek, half French Canadian as well. We're probably related.
Yeah.
But like, I walked around the neighborhood the other day and stopped by to say hello to my parents, and my dad gave me some cucumber kimchi that he had just made.
Oh.
So I'm like, wait, my life is a K-drama. And when I went to Korea last April, when I walked, like I landed in the airport every 10 minutes, I kept going, I'm in Korea. Like, this is, and I realized my shoelace came untied, and I just looked around to see if there was a beautiful man that was going to come tie it for me, because this
Or catch you when you tripped over the lace.
This is the kind of life I have. So yeah, it was fun for me. It was fun for me because there were so many cultural things that my family does that other American families don't do that I got to connect with. That was really fun for me.
Okay. Allison?
Yeah, so this is the part where our brains diverge because I knew virtually nothing about Korean culture, Korean food. I knew that there had been Olympics in Seoul when I was about 7, and that was about the extent of it. I remember saying early on, probably while I was watching Crash Landing on You, that like, so I'm a big fan of Theodora Taylor's 7-figure fiction, which talks, some people refer to it as the butter book. It talks about like universal fantasies and like what are things that resonate with lots of people. And I think the appeal of K-dramas and K-drama romances is that if Netflix isn't giving you the cultural notes, you don't understand the culture, you don't understand the language, but you're still invested in the story. Like at the very heart of it, there is something that is universal. It doesn't matter if you're Canadian or Korean or American or Greek. Like it just, the idea of being lost in a hostile environment and the handsome but secretly lonely army captain is going to risk everything to protect you, like that is a universal fantasy. Absolutely. You could set it anywhere. And I mean, it wouldn't be Chanbin, he would not be as beautiful, but it would still be a compelling story. So I think for me early on, that was sort of what I gravitated to. Now it's fun to sort of see where things diverge from what I would consider North American romances. Like I often, sometimes I get a little bit of the ick in like Korean office romances or rich man, poor girl romances because there's this power imbalance that they never acknowledge. Like he could literally ruin her life. And so there are some shows that I'll watch because everyone else has watched them and I want to know what's going on, but I sort of walk away being like, yeah, that wasn't my favorite. A lot of them, I see them, they're like modern period dramas. Like they have that same sort of like that tension and that yearning because we rarely get to anything like more physical than a hug or a kiss. So you have to see them, and they have that same feeling of period dramas of like the social rules and like the really strict hierarchy of who outranks who and who you have to bow to and who you have to like pour drinks for. So it has a similar, I mean, obviously it's a completely different culture, but it has a similar vibe in terms of just like a window into another world, you know, whether that's another era or another country. And so I think that's probably the thing that still appeals to me. And when we do get into those slightly icky power imbalances, like I just fast forward and move on to the next show, because the nice thing about K-dramas is there's always a zillion more to check out. So if one romance isn't working for you, it's just like romance novels. Like I'll DNF a book, I'll DNF a K-drama. And sometimes they're so bananas I finish them anyway, because I just can't imagine how this is all gonna shake out in the wash. So
It is funny what triggers your ick factor. 'Cause
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
it's something you totally didn't expect, and you're like, oh wow, that's
Well,
very
I mean,
interesting.
so the first time it happened was I was watching A Business Proposal, which is like, if we're talking
I
about
love-
romances, like that's on everybody's list as like a cute office romance. But he was like literally in control of the whole thing the whole time. Like it was horrible. Um, but that's just how I felt about it. Like lots of people just, just like I'm not a big fan of dark romance, which is like the trend right now. Like that's what the thing that is resonating with other people. And so they overlook some of the ick. I worked in the corporate world for a long time. So to be in that situation with a man in the office would be like, hell no, I'm not doing that. So yeah, it's very personal what works and what doesn't for you in any romance, whether it's a K-drama or a book.
Good point.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the culture. I knew some folks growing up who were from Korea. My best friend's cousin was stationed over there and married a Korean woman, and so had kids that I knew growing up, but I didn't really get into the culture much. And so that's one of the fascinating points is, ooh, that's similar but different. You can see the European influence, but you can also see how it was glommed on top of a much older tradition that just sort of made a few adjustments here and there. And then you have the things that are, wow, that's really different. I'm not sure how I deal with that. And so I love things that are sneaky learning, where I get to come away knowing more about something than I did when I started watching it, even though it wasn't academic.
Yeah.
And so Korean dramas definitely scratch that itch because, ooh, I found something out new today. Now I have a whole list of new things I want to try at the local restaurant because the food, everybody is so
Yeah.
food. The food is
Oh,
such a big thing. If you love someone, feed them and feed them in like
Yes.
20 different dishes.
This is
Yes.
so Greek. It's so Greek.
in
And
in the
again,
middle of
yeah.
in the middle of Crash Landing on You, where I mean, spoiler for people who haven't watched this, but it's been out for years. It's not my fault. As she's leaving him, she thinks she's leaving him in North Korea. This is the end. She says something about like rest well and eat good food. And like, this is my first Korean show. And I'm thinking like, what a weird thing to say to people. But then they say it in literally every show. And like, it's just such an intrinsic part of the culture to like make sure people are well fed and well taken care of. Yeah. But at the time, expecting this to be like a romance novel, like you would never hear that in an American romance novel. Like rest well and eat good food. Like that's not romantic. It's kind. But that's not what we would expect. So yeah, so there was definitely some learning there too.
The fascinating thing to me culture-wise actually is if you watch some of the early really popular K-dramas, I'm thinking like Boys Over Flowers, which I suffered through, so I never have to watch it again. But that was just what, 2008, 2009? So just within the last less than 20 years, you see the culture shift just in the art form.
Yeah.
You know that reflects Korean society. So like just sociologically to me that's fascinating to watch that shift and knowing that actually happened in the culture in real life as well.
Yeah. And we're going to do a whole another panel on paranormal Korean dramas because this is me and I like everything with a dose of spooky. But I do love when those things show up even in the non-paranormal romance, just because it's part of the culture. And I have learned so much about Korean funeral customs and Korean wedding customs and what's considered good and bad luck. And I go back to sneaky learning. This was someplace I had never spent a whole lot of time thinking about. And like, it's not, ooh, that's really cool. And I have a whole list of things I want to order at the restaurant. But Yeah, I think that I agree with you completely on the business setting, but I feel that way about American romances
Yeah,
that are in a
yeah,
business setting. It's like, ick. I did
yeah,
corporate for 20 years. No, no, no,
yeah.
just don't do that.
I
Um,
mean, that is a fair point, that it would be just as icky in an American office as it was. And again, not everyone's going to see it that way, but
Yeah,
that's,
I am
I
totally team
know,
business proposal. I love it. I love all the
I
office
know. And he's
romances.
Canadian. I'm supposed to like this show. I am nationally obligated to enjoy this show, but I just, from an office perspective, it was just like,
Yeah,
but one of
my sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say one of my favorite watches of last year was Marry My Husband,
Oh
and
yeah.
he's her boss, and like I had no problem with that.
You have to watch Marry My Husband and then Perfect
I
Marriage
did, I
Revenge,
did,
like
yeah,
back to
yeah.
back to see how similar but also how different they are. It's kind of
Well, so I recommend to people. So I thought the romance was better in Perfect Marriage Revenge, but I thought the revenge was better in Marry My Husband.
agreed.
So yeah, that's how I recommend it to people, depending on what mood they're in.
But yeah, the drama that does not speak to me, that so many people are like, why isn't on this on your top? I call it my top 30-11 list. You can find it on my website because I have my top 10, and then there are 30 that are number 11.
Right.
But they're like, oh, what do you mean you haven't seen Flower of Evil? I'm like, yes, I have seen Flower of Evil. I was used by a sociopath, and I do not find sociopaths attractive in any way. I believe that the actors were amazing and that the drama was well done, but I literally couldn't wait for it to be over the whole entire time. So I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I never have to see it again. It's not going on my top 10 list.
Yeah.
Sorry. Enjoy.
Yeah.
yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that because there are, particularly with dark romance, it's like, no, that's unhealthy. That would make a really negative experience. I can't fantasize that part of it away. So go you, enjoy what you enjoy.
Yeah.
But I can't turn that part of my brain off going, no, this is a really bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it becomes a very personal psychological
Mhm.
experience depending
Yeah.
on your life.
Mhm.
And the mood you're in on a particular, I mean, maybe not if you were used by a psychopath, but I mean, I could rewatch Business Proposal tomorrow and find it charming. Like, it just, that week happened to be the week where I really felt like I needed to stand up for women's right in the workplace. So, I mean, you never
I
know.
was in a mood to watch the world burn and I turned on happiness. And I was like, I do not like zombie shows. I am never going to, I will watch this for 10 minutes. And if I don't like it, I'm not going to continue. And I
Yeah.
swear those two are my OTP. They are
Yes.
relationship goals forever. And I
Yes.
want to write
But see,
every romantic couple I want to be that
the
couple.
marriage of convenience zombie
Yes.
mashup we didn't know we needed. Like,
Oh my God. Because
that's,
they
yeah,
always loved each other and they
they
worked
did.
together the whole
They
time.
did. Yeah.
No point in time did they ever turn on each other or was there ever any doubt. It was just always a known factor. And I loved
Yeah.
that.
Any Korean show where you have like a true partnership like that, whether it's Happiness or Vincenzo, or Tale of the Nine Tails, like where you've got like a
Mhm.
real like again, I guess it's the opposite of that office power imbalance, like where they're really truly equals who are helping each other achieve a goal. Like, yeah, that is my romance catnip. Like,
And
that's
because
what
the
I'm here
dramas
for.
are 12, 16 episodes long, you get to have that slow burn and the
Yeah,
relationship actually develop instead of
yeah,
the insta romance that we have to
yeah.
have here in America.
But the other thing, Gail and I were actually on a panel together at Coastal Magic last year, and I talked about this then. So the beauty of romances and K-dramas is that you get this 12 to 16 episode arcs. So you have lots of time for the romance to build and evolve. But then you also, in most cases, get an ending, and that's it.
Absolutely.
Last year I was working on a book and I put on Grey's Anatomy, old episodes of Grey's Anatomies in the background. And I think I started, like, I didn't even start at the beginning. I started like up season 15 and just let it play until I got bored in like season 20. And the problem with American shows like that is they never end. And so you never get that satisfying, like, they're together now and they're happy and we're good. because we need to set up season 22. And so just as it looks like these two characters are about to get together and be happy, like suddenly, oops, there's an ex-wife we forgot about, or so-and-so's got a brain tumor, or there's a secret baby. And so, you know, I hear lots of people are like, oh, we need a second season of this K-drama, that K-drama. And like, it would be great to be able to continue to follow these characters along. But the 12 to 16 episode format with a finale that we never revisit those people again means we get a satisfying ending. And it's a little sad that we don't get to hear more, but we don't also get stuck in that churn of like, oh, for God's sake, not break up again. Like, stop. So that's, to me, the real appeal of these shows.
I'm still amazed that they managed to make a sequel to Tale of the Nine-Tailed. I had no idea how they were going to pull that off, and they did. And I helped contribute to the coffee cart that went, like, Lee Dong-wook knows my name because it was on the banner on the coffee cart in the snow on December 16th when they were filming Tale of the Nine-Tailed. It's like my K-drama claim to fame. Personally, like in my heart, I think the sequel to Goblin is actually Touch Your Heart because Lee Dong-wook and you and I, you know, get to do their thing in another life and
and be happy.
Yeah, I grew up, my grandmother lived with us when I was growing up, and she was addicted to soap operas. So we're talking like 1970s era soap opera.
Oh, talk about ending.
Never ending.
I grew up on, you know, Secret Storm and The Doctors and Edge of Night and all of those, where, you know, people could be together for 20 seasons and still have a teenage pregnancy. They only look 40, they're still 19. This all just happened in 2 years, you know. And so I do think it's refreshing to get like 16 episodes and we're done.
Yeah.
And we haven't completely beaten this horse to death. I did get a little of that on Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha. It was kind of like, oh, we're going to have a last minute, you know, split with the couple. Oh, we're going to, you know, this, that, and the other thing. It was like, really, guys? You could have maybe shaved off a couple of episodes here. But that's just me, and that's the early trauma of all of those.
It took me a while to warm to the 1 year later trope.
Yeah.
I like it now, but it took me, that was one I had to get used to.
But you can feel, it's not a romance, but I just finished watching the 2 seasons of Taxi Driver, which I really enjoyed. It's a lot of fun as a like slightly goofy in that. I mean, we can talk about this in romances too. I love how like Korean dramas brand themselves. So Taxi Driver, the first couple episodes are like this slightly goofy, you know, they're a team of revenge vigilantes. There's a lot of like goofy costumes and accents and things like this. But then about episode 4 or 5, the writers start like subliminally telling you like, pay no attention to this black market organ harvesting operation in the background. Like, and there, it's like Secretary Kim like is branded as this like super sweet office rom-com, but pay no attention to the like tragic childhood kidnapping subplot. But Taxi Driver, I really enjoyed it, but both seasons are 16 episodes long, and you could really feel the writers like stretching to get through 15 and 16 and keep the pace going. So I do agree with Gail that sometimes they could stand to be a little bit shorter. But sometimes, you know, Perfect Marriage Revenge could have gone on for 1 or 2 more episodes, and I wouldn't have been mad about it because I think it was only 10 episodes. So, I mean, like all art forms and like all, you know, consumers of art, you know, you get book reviews that are like, you ask 10 readers and 5 of them will say, you know, that book was perfect length. And the other 5 will be somewhere between like, it was way too short, I need 6 more copies, or I need 6 more sequels. And the other people are like, it just dragged, I really couldn't get
Okay, look, if they wanted to make as many seasons of Hospital Playlist as Grey's Anatomy, I would have no problem with that.
So I haven't watched Hospital Playlist yet, but I'm really bad with actor
Be glad
names,
that both seasons are out now, because you would have been very angry to only watch the first season.
One of my favorite historical watch last year was Captivating the King, which is so I'm gonna actually, excuse me looking away from the screen, but I am gonna look up his name because it's worth knowing. So it's Jo Jung-suk, who was also in Hospital Playlist. I'd never seen him in anything before. And I know, what's I doing? So he's a little bit older than your average Korean historical leading man at this point. He was so compelling in Captivating the King that then I turned around and I watched him in Oh My Ghost, with Park Bo Young, and like it was a completely different role, and it definitely,
yeah.
I think it was made in like 2014, 2015, so it had that like slightly older, slightly a little too cringy, cheesy feeling, but he's just so good that like I don't care. I will
Charming.
watch
He's
him in
so charming.
anything. He's really
I
charming.
will warn you, I can't remember the name of it, but he did one with IU like a million years ago, and
Oh
it is
God.
40 episodes long. And I used to call it the drama that never ended. This is the drama that never ends, because it's just, and every single episode is an hour long, and it
Oh,
just, it's
no.
almost interminable. But I mean, they're both charming. So
Yes, yeah.
Well, folks, we have blown through our time, and there are still a bunch more to watch.
So
So,
much to say.
you know, we're going to do another whole panel on the paranormal ones. So I hope you can come back for that. But before we wrap up, please tell everybody where we can find you online. Alethea?
I am at aletheakontis.com, and right now, just about every single social media on the planet. I'm like glitter. I'm everywhere.
Allison?
You can find me at AllisonTemple.com. I'm also on some social media as Allison Temple Books. I'm currently on a social media hiatus for January, so you will not, well, you can follow me there, but I won't have anything new to say until February. But yeah, the website is the best place to check me out, AllisonTemple.com.
Okay. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbrice.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on nearly all the major social medias. But most of the time, you can find me here on Continual. So thank you very much for a great discussion. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more romance coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.